Imagine a vast, breathtaking view of a completely pristine world at dawn. Picture rivers flowing through lush, wild vegetation, this untouched creation just bathed in golden morning light. Birds are moving through the mist. It's an atmosphere of perfect, undisturbed peace, a literal sacred harmony between humanity, nature, and the divine. Today in this explainer, we're going to look at a story you probably think you know inside and out, but we are going to look at it through a completely different lens. We aren't just looking at the first man and woman here, we're actually looking at the deep psychological and relational dynamics of the first family. We're going to unpack the original architecture of intimacy, trust, and shared destiny.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because, before there were tribes, before there were laws or nations or sprawling civilizations, there was just a relationship, a man, a woman, and God right in the midst of them. This union is the absolute fountainhead of all human communion. The text doesn't merely give us two isolated individuals wandering around in a garden, it gives us the first we. This relationship is literally the birthplace of human society itself.
And man, this relationship begins in just pure wonder. Try to picture them encountering one another for the very first time. There's no fake, idealized perfection, just natural human beauty and this overwhelming sense of total recognition. Listen to Adam's first recorded words, "Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh." I mean, it is pure poetry. There's no suspicion here whatsoever. There's zero calculation, no self-protection. He looks at her and sees not an object, but this glorious counterpart. Family begins with this incredible ability to truly see the other person without any walls up. Before family is ever a structure or a duty, it is delight.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core dynamic of their union. Their bond is not autonomous. It's actually a triangular relationship. You have the man and woman facing one another, walking together in peaceful communion, but both of them are facing God. The vertical relationship, their trust in the Creator, is what gives life to the horizontal relationship between them. As long as trust flows upward, intimacy naturally flows outward. As long as God remains at the center, unity remains entirely possible. It's a perfect, delicate balance.
But then, things shift. The shadows start to get a bit longer. The light becomes softer, a little less secure, and the temptation enters. You see, the serpent doesn't merely attack some random rule. It strategically dismantles the structure of communion itself. It first distorts trust in God, which then, actually it's more like a domino effect, it distorts Adam through Eve, and finally, it completely fractures the bond between the two of them. It is a calculated, systematic attack on the very triangle of trust we just talked about. And through it all, Adam just stands by, increasingly passive, just watching rather than intervening.
So, the fall is not just a moment of simple moral disobedience. It is a profound, total relational disintegration. Think about how tragic and psychologically deep this really is. This couple was given one shared trust, one sacred calling. Their love was meant to be strengthened by common obedience. But instead of becoming united around their trust in God, they become united in transgression. That moment of eating isn't some massive theatrical spectacle. It's an intimate tragedy of growing uncertainty and dread as the vibrant colors of Eden just start to fade away.
Let's actually break down exactly how this fracture happens. Because the very first failure in family order, it wasn't about domination or control. It was about Adam's silent withdrawal. He is present enough to participate, but absent enough to avoid any real responsibility. He completely abandons his role as a guardian of their sacred space. Eve, on the flip side, makes this isolated choice that totally bypasses shared discernment. Together, they choose autonomy over communion. And that is the real catastrophe here. The self becomes the organizing principle. The family begins to collapse from within.
And the immediate result of that choice? Shame. Before this, nakedness just meant total, 100% relational transparency. Nothing was hidden, nothing was weaponized against the other. They were fully known and fully safe. But suddenly, as they become aware of their vulnerability, they can't even look at each other. They avoid eye contact. Their movements become defensive. That garden, which used to feel like an absolute sanctuary, now feels vast, unfamiliar, and frankly terrifying. This exact moment marks the birth of emotional distance, defensiveness, and fear inside human relationships. The very relationship that used to offer safety is now a place of unbearable exposure.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the sheer, heartbreaking contrast. Remember that beautiful poetry from earlier, "Bone of my bones"? Look at what it has devolved into. The woman you gave me. They are standing there before God, filled with fear and guilt, and Adam immediately points away from himself, leaving Eve to carry the entire burden of accusation. In one single sentence, he wounds both relationships at the exact same time. He distances himself from Eve, and he distances himself from God. It is the total, utter collapse of trust.
The fallout here is absolutely devastating. What we're looking at is literally the exact anatomy of how a family collapses. Wonder becomes blame. Gratitude sours into bitter resentment. Their shared destiny shatters into mutual self-protection. The first couple learns the agonizing lesson that pretty much every broken family since has known. Once trust is fractured, even love can become a place of hiding.
But, the story doesn't just end in total ruin. Instead, we find grace right there in the ruins. God's very first act after their judgment is profoundly, beautifully relational. He clothes them. Just imagine the quiet mercy of this moment. They're completely broken, ashamed, grieving, and the God from whom they hid becomes the one who covers them more deeply than they could ever cover themselves. He doesn't just erase the consequence of their actions, but he absolutely refuses to let consequence be the final word.
And so they face exile. You can almost picture these expansive, cinematic scenes of them leaving Eden, with that glowing garden fading behind them and the harsh, unknown wilderness stretching out ahead. But exile changes their relationship in a really fascinating way. They transition from the first lovers of paradise to the first companions in suffering. Out there outside the garden, they face resistance, hard labor, and real grief. Yet paradoxically, navigating this broken world together makes their union even more profound.
Because out in that wilderness, life happens, and man, it brings some crushing emotional realism. The first home actually becomes the birthplace of both worship and murder. They have to endure the horrific family wound of Cain and Abel, the devastating reality that family can produce the deepest kinds of heartbreak. But from that exact same fractured union comes Seth, generational continuity. In the warm evening light of his birth, life continues despite the sorrow. It's the ultimate paradox, right? They are the origin of broken family systems, yet they are also the origin of redeemed family hope.
So the crucial point is this: Adam and Eve aren't just some ancient historical or theological footnote. They are literally the living anatomy of every single family today. Its beauty, its vulnerability, its terrifying power to wound, and its stubborn ability to endure. Every marriage, every home, every parent-child dynamic is still living inside the blueprint of those very first questions that were raised back in Eden.
Which brings us to the questions we all have to ask ourselves right now. Seriously, will we organize our lives around trust in God, or are we going to choose the autonomy of self? Will we keep the center, or will we try to become the center? Will we allow silence to replace responsibility? When things get hard, are we just going to withdraw and become passive when our relationships desperately require us to be guardians of trust and sacred space?
Will we let blame replace wonder? When the pressure hits, do we take our poetry and turn it into accusations, pointing the finger rather than actually protecting the bond we share? Will shame create hiding? Are we going to allow our fear and our vulnerability to build these massive walls of emotional distance between us and the people we are meant to be fully transparent with?
Or will grace teach us how to remain together, even east of Eden, even when the paradise we originally hoped for is completely gone and we have to face the resistance of a broken world side by side?
You see, their story tells us that family is always tested by choice. And yeah, for sure, it can be completely shattered by mistrust. But it can also survive through mercy. Picture an elderly Adam and Eve walking together through an imperfect world. The paradise behind them is long gone, yet their companionship somehow endures. Even when the garden is lost, love can still walk forward, wounded, humbled, clothed by grace, and carrying the future in its arms. As you look at your own relationships today, the echo of Eden remains. When the paradise you hoped for is lost, will you hide in the ruins, or will you let grace help you walk forward?